let's move on to the next category. We're now looking at swinging. What are we talking about? Two-handed swings. Basically, it's the same as clubbing, but the person has a longer reach and more impact. Common things are baseball bats and pool cues. Because of the added weight and reach, you're in a lot more trouble. That's why we need to look at some specific defenses here. Now, statistically, they are not near as common as glassings, for example, but they're far, far more dangerous, and if you're not prepared for them, real serious consequences can arise. Let's look at some defenses. Now we're talking about two-handed swings. As I mentioned, as the weapon gets longer and heavier, it becomes more dangerous, but it also takes more time and effort for the person to swing it effectively. So statistically, these attacks become less frequent, but they become more dangerous. In North America, the quintessential two-handed swing is the baseball bat swing. Batter up! As he winds up behind here, especially if he actually knows how to play baseball or hockey, he knows how to torque his hips, and boom, this is dangerous. We got a couple of approaches to this, and we're going to start again looking on this sliding scale that really helps. With dangerous weapons like this, you want to try to take every opportunity you can to try to defend early. It could be a baseball bat, it could be a golf club, it could be a tire iron, anything that's heavy and has to be swung with two hands. So just like in clubbing defenses, if I can defend early, that's the best time. As he winds up, freeze for that moment there, his hands and the weapon are the farthest thing away from me. So what I want to do is the same type of cobra block and try to smother the attack early. The difference is I've got two hands trapped in here, and I got to be much, much tighter and hold on to them. There's a couple of things we can do from here, but let's go back and make sure we got the details. All right, so the hardest part of this defense, and most of the other ones, is the idea that I have to get in on this guy. I have to get on the inside of the arc of this club. No matter what the club is, a short one, a long one, the most dangerous part of it is at the end. That's where it's moving the fastest. There's the most momentum and velocity behind there. But even without the flinch reflex, the natural inclination of people under a stressful situation is to back up. You can see how this is just suicide. I'm going right into the path of the fastest moving part. So conceptually, this is really simple. To be able to do it under stress is the difficult part. And all it takes is simple, repetitive drilling from 1 to 3,000 repetitions to begin. Somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 would be a better idea. I have one opportunity to jam this attack early. If I hesitate for even a split second, I'm losing a lot of that opportunity. I have to get used to pouncing on my opponent. If I want to defeat somebody, I have to pounce on them like an animal. Animals don't crawl around the watering hole, and then when the lion sees the zebra, they don't stand back and paw at it. They jump on the thing and they get all their body weight, all their force, all their ferocity. So basically, as a human being, I'm still more dangerous the closer I get to my opponent. So as soon as I see him wind up, I need to pounce on him, and one of the simplest ways to stop him early is the same kind of cobra lock. The problem is I've got two arms in here, so I just have to be tighter. I got to be in control. Now, once again, in the old days, we would go to the side, step in front, do a hip throw. But we still have the same disarm. We still have the same option. It's just more difficult because he has two hands on his grip. So we're going to use this arm in the same way to try and force the handle to the weak point of his grip where his fingers are. But I'm going to use this hand to help me add some leverage and break the leverage of his grip. Here's what I'm talking about. Hold the bat or the pipe in this case. Pretend my arm's still over here. What I want to show you first is the action of my second arm. In this position, his hands are working together. They're in a naturally strong position. When I lace his arms, look what happens. It twists them in an unnatural action. So if he had just one hand on the bat, other hand, I would use the same disarm. Now in this case, can you see what I'm doing? I'm trying to bring the pipe through his fingers. So if he had a palm up grip, the angle is up and away. If he has a palm inward grip, which often happens, the angle is this way. Do you see how we're always working against the weak part of his grip? It's really, really simple, and there's no way he's going to be able to hold on to that with just his fingers. So we already know from the previous lesson how to do this. I just want to make sure you're clear about the angle. Okay, I can do it this way too. Anything that's a slightly circular motion to make his palm turn to the outside. You see how it pops right off? And if he's very, very strong, he keeps his palm down like this, I can do it that way. If I needed two hands, if there was a handle on the end, I could do that. You understand that from the previous lesson. Now, let's go back to here. I have to dysfunction his grip here to make it weaker, and then I can go back to the first disarm because he won't have the strength of two hands. So what I'm doing is doing an over-under. Looks complicated, but it's really simple. Just make sure you understand that this hand is pushing down, which simultaneously pushes this hand up. This is popping his grip and twisting his wrist there. So as he winds up and I see it coming and I'm able to get here early, I want to start sliding back, controlling here. But while this hand does the same thing, this one's going to do this. Now if I figure four here, it just helps. And I can rip him off that grip. And once again, I'm back to bargaining position. Now here's an important point. I talk about having the weapon in my hand, which is good. But if you have an aggressive guy here, you don't know what he's going to do. In the real world, I can't hesitate and think about what I'm going to do. So if I whale him in the head, it may be justified, but he's no longer armed. You may just have jacked up that force level beyond a legally defensible position. So under stress, it's difficult to think clearly, and that could very well happen. And then, man, I'm facing manslaughter charges because there's a guy with his head split open, and I've got a club in my hand. Oops. So something that I drill myself a lot, and with my students, is when I get here, if I'm going to hit him, I want to think about hitting his legs. It's non-lethal, and it's probably going to take the guy out. So you don't have to worry about killing the guy, because with a two-handed swing, if you make contact with his head, you're in a life-threatening situation. So in order to avoid that, unless you really feel it's necessary to try to take the guy out, after I break this grip with both the short club and the long club, think about hitting his legs. Also, there's a much better chance you're actually going to hit the guy. If his hands fly up in the natural flinch position, remember, the first blow usually doesn't take the guy out. It breaks his arms, and then as his arms come down, the second, third one are what causes the horrific injuries. If you do that to somebody when they're unarmed, you're definitely gone up on the wrong side of the force ladder. So if his natural reflex is to cover his head, I'm solving two problems here. I'm not using as much force, and I don't have to worry about hitting the guy 2 or 3 times, which could very well look like excessive force. Let's look at a variation and some details on this two-handed swing. The baseball bat, the golf club, it's very heavy, very dangerous, and you can do it from a long ways away. So as I enter like this, if I'm not as early as I'd like to be, it's important to have the second hand up, because as it slides through your arms, this is going to help me take some of the steam off as I make my entry. Also, make sure you have your head tucked and your arm up along the side of your head. If I'm very late and I really screwed this up, hopefully my arm is going to take more of the force than if I do it this way and he comes right over top of my head. I may be able to survive that third version I should say. But remember, this is for early. When I see him wind up, I have to go before he begins the other part of his swing. Now as we hit here, we have some options. Boom. If I really ran into him, if I'm lucky and he's not too heavy, my body weight's going to push him backwards, and we're back to the same scenario. I can use the old soltagere and I can drive him back. I can put the hand on the chin, whatever. Now another option is to use this old style combat jiu-jitsu reverse noose choke or clothesline choke. I can choke the guy here and actually hang him over my back as I run around. Now, sometimes this leaves the weapon in his hand. There's a chance he might be able to try and bonk you like this from over his back, but it's not a very comfortable position, is it? What do you think your chances would be doing that? Pretty low. Yeah, he's most likely to drop the weapon. So let's look at that carefully. This is something you can use in a lot of situations. And this is something I would advocate if you're in a opponent weapon situation. What could be more dangerous than that? What this allows me to do is to keep moving and actually choke somebody out while I'm carrying him on my back. It's actually really, really effective and a lot simpler to do than it looks. So the scenario is the same. He winds up and I'm able to get in there early. Now as my body weight bangs into him, this arm's just going to come up and clothesline across his neck. This really hurts, and if I have the presence of mind to pop his hip at the same time, it's going to be beautiful. Now, this allows me to get my momentum going and get a little bit behind him as I step forward. Basically, I'm in the same old Sotogarity position here, the hook flip. So if something goes wrong, I can revert back to this. But if I'm able to get my hips in like this, it's really hard for the guy to recover from this. Look what I'm doing to him. His back is bent, and I can literally drag him around while I'm choking him. Try and pop me with that club. While I'm choking him. All right, that's like a reverse clothesline, hip throw, and neck lever. It's beautiful and relatively simple. All right, let's look at the two-handed swing late. This is really, really dangerous. He winds up, he's coming towards me, and he uncorks this before I have a chance to move in and use this cobra block. Now, like we talked about, if he's moving towards me rapidly, the last thing I can do is start moving back. It just isn't functional. He's going to run me over. He's going to crack me in the head. I need to create time and space. Space and more reaction time. Like we talked about in the original Unarmed Defense series, one of the simplest ways to do that is to level change. Now, in this case, if I do a conventional level change, he can just run into me. I may not be able to take him down. Sometimes you can do a double leg. That's new school approach. But one of the old school throws that looks really fancy but is extremely effective is known as a scooping throw, or in Japanese, tsukinagi. So instead of changing levels this way, I'm going to change levels this way so my head is on the opposite side. As his body weight comes crashing into me, I lift his legs, straighten my back, and he goes right over top of me. So once again, as he comes running at me, I need to change levels. Now, he pulled up at that moment because he knew what I was doing, but in reality, we're going to crash like this. What I'm doing is getting my head as far away as I can. If I just stood here, that thing is likely to come right over my head and miss me. But if we crash into each other at that moment, this is all the time I have. I have a split second to react. I'm not going to have time to move side to side. As he comes running at me, I need to get in like this. Now, people say this is a fancy technique, it's this, it's that. The tsukinagi, it looks fancy when you do it for real, you throw them up in the air. But once again, this is one of the things that I've seen completely untrained people do accidentally. I've seen it happen in actual fights, and I've seen it happen when I was a kid playing rugby. A lot of guys, we weren't even taught this as a tackling. People were jumping on each other's legs and sending them through the air quite regularly, and we didn't have any training. So imagine what you're going to be able to do with 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions. All right, let's look at some drilling. We're going to use the same idea here. We're going to do a give and take drill using essentially the same disarm, except we're modifying it to deal with the double strength of a two-handed grip. Just remember, when you're drilling, you're going to have to step back a little bit to give yourself the sense of that extra space that's going to happen with a two-handed swing. So we're going to enter like this. I'm going to control the weapon. At the same time, my second hand is going to weave his arms, and I'm going to twist and come out. Then I pick the weapon up and I swing at him. He's going to do the same disarm. Let the guy go that way, very good. He rearms himself, winds up. If I can enter just at the moment that he's winding up, that's the timing I'm looking for. And you're really going to see a more efficient defense. Basically, it's like there's a rubber band tied between the end of his weapon and my body. Here's this imaginary rubber band. So as he winds up, that rubber band pulls me forward. As he winds up, it pulls me forward. One hand on the inside, one here. I twist his arms and jerk it out. It puts the weapon under my armpit. Now he's got the rubber band. As soon as I wind up, let it pull you forward. Slap my arms down and get close to me. Get this in your armpit. You shouldn't wait for it. You should close in to make sure you don't end up getting it against the ribs. He strips it out. Not bad, considering I haven't actually taught him. There's that rubber band effect. I come in, and every once in a while, if you want, you can throw this one in as the finish. That's a simple give and take drill using the two-handed disarm against a two-handed swing.